the movie's great horror stories, three themes, each deriving from a literary classic, have led the field. Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Dracula. Frankenstein was first made by Thomas Edison in 1910. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde had no less than 7 silent versions. But Dracula, with its subtle mixtures of physical and suggested horrors, presented more of a challenge. It wasn't until 1922 that the great German director F.W. Murnau, who had already made a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with Bela Lugosi and Conrad Veidt, created this forerunner of all supernatural and vampire thrillers. The story of Dracula on... Transylvania, deep in the Carpathian Mountains, April 1897. To this country of medieval superstition has come Jonathan Hawker, real estate agent from Bremen. He is to meet with a certain Count Dracula to conclude negotiations for several properties back in Germany, which the Count has expressed interest in. Toward evening, Hawker stops at an inn for dinner and directions. There, the name Count Dracula draws a startling reaction. The innkeeper urges Hawker to stay over until morning. It is both foolish and dangerous to venture into our countryside at night. Hawker agrees. The very atmosphere has begun to penetrate even the non-superstitious Hawker. Possibly he'll read himself to sleep. The Book of the Vampires, the Nosferatu, the undead, preys on the living whose blood he must have for his own sustenance. He is powerless by day and must return before dawn to his grave, or a coffin containing earth from his native land. With the morning sun, Hawker is amazed that he could have been affected by these country superstitions. He decides to complete his business with Count Dracula as soon as possible and return to his wife in Bremen, and arranges to proceed immediately by coach to Castle Dracula. The journey is long, but the scenery is most interesting. Then, as the sun goes down, the coach comes to a halt. Castle Dracula, this is as close as we dare come. Hawker goes on alone. To suggest the supernatural, director Murnau deliberately produced this uneven, speeded-up effect. Count Dracula? The Count apologizes. His servants have all gone to bed. He offers Harker supper and says he will look over the deeds and properties while his guest eats. When Harker awakes, he has no recollection of having fallen asleep, nor even any clear memories of the evening before. There is food prepared for him, but his host has vanished. He looks everywhere within the castle walls, but there is no one around. The castle is deserted. Repelled by the eeriness of his venture, and by Count Dracula himself, Harker resolves to finish his mission that very night and return home immediately. With nightfall, Count Dracula reappears. He is ready to complete the business arrangements. A miniature of Nina, Jonathan's wife. The deeds are signed, and Harker rests easier, for he can now leave in the morning. But somehow, in his luggage, the book of the vampire. Next morning, Jonathan Harker no longer doubts the existence of vampires, but he must have final proof. The burial crypt of the Draculas. Castle Dracula became a terrifying prison for Jonathan Harker. One evening at dusk, several weeks later, a weakened and dispirited Harker is aroused by an unusual bustling. He looks down into the courtyard. The Count is loading coffins. Suddenly, Dracula's plan becomes starkly apparent. He will place the coffins in the lots he has strategically purchased around the city. From them, he will prey upon the people of Bremen. They will supply the lifeblood without which Dracula must perish. Down the river goes Dracula's unholy cargo. It is heading for the sea and the unsuspecting city. The strange cargo is loaded aboard the Demeter. The captain is astonished, unable to understand a shipment of simple boxes of dirt. But he accepts it. Several days go by. Aboard the Demeter, a sailor is stricken with a mysterious malady. He is weak, listless, but apart from two blood-dry punctures on his throat, he has no outward signs of illness. More days pass by. One by one, relentlessly, the same strange malady strikes the crew. The captain and his mate are powerless. And finally, they bury the last of their men at sea. Then the mate makes a decision. Whatever it is that has made this a voyage of death must have come from the cargo, those simple boxes of earth. The sheets he has knotted together are too short. But he is outside the castle. Delirious, he has been cared for by the villagers and brought to the hospital, where, though still feverish, Hawk refuses to await full recovery. Only he knows Dracula's plan. Only he can stop it. He must reach Bremen. Hawker at last returns home, still not knowing where or how Dracula will invade the city. Well before dawn, before the city is awakened, Dracula removes the coffins from the ship and proceeds with his plans. Within days, Bremen is transformed into a city of sorrow and death. Dracula has declared war on the living. From Jonathan's story of his horrible adventure, and from reading the Book of the Vampire, Nina now realizes the full menace that is Dracula. Only a woman can break his frightful spell. A woman pure in heart, who will offer her blood freely to Nosferatu and will keep the vampire by her side until the sun rises. Only she can save the city of death, the terrified city. The endless procession of death. must invite the vampire to her side willingly. Of her own free will. It was as if a heavy shadow had been lifted from the land. The sun shone brightly again. The air was cleansed, and the country was at peace once more. Less than 3 years later, director F.W. Murnau came to be regarded as one of the screen's greatest directors and its foremost poet. He capped his career in Germany with Faust and came to Hollywood to make the beautiful and brilliant Sunrise. His great pictorial flair, so evident in that film, was responsible for his being assigned, together with documentary pioneer Robert Flaherty, to a South Sea story, Taboo. But the two individualists didn't see eye to eye, and Flaherty withdrew. Instead of a picturesque and romantic story, Taboo became a tragic and almost macabre film. At times, almost a throwback to the horror film we have just seen. It was a classic. The silent screen's last, for it was not released until 1931. It was also Murnau's last. Tragically, he was killed in an automobile accident even before he could see the film premiered.